Religious people raised by atheist agnostics. Do you exist? What made you religious? How did they react? Not me but a friend. She was raised by an atheist family. When she was around 12 she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. In the hospital she met a boy also suffering from cancer. He was Mormon and very religious. They fell in love. She became Mormon. After a couple years of dating he died. That was a few years ago and she is still a very devout Mormon. As far as I know her family is supportive. I'm straight up anti-theistic, but if I had a child go through this I wouldn't want to rob her of the idea her loved one is waiting for her somewhere. In fact, I would actively support her beliefs even if I didn't really believe them myself. Both of my parents were Christians when I was younger, until there was a serious sex abuse scandal in our church. The victims, myself included, were young boys all involved in the music at church and the abuser was a member of the leadership staff. The pastor didn't know how to handle it and basically attempted to shut his eyes and ears and go on like it never happened, even though the church was breaking from something so horrific. Cue my parents saying screw this to organized religion. Flash forward to me, just graduated college and lost in the wilderness of no money, career prospects, or healthy relationships to speak of. A friend of mine invites me to go to church. I've not set foot in a church since I was abused. I went, and I remember the sermon being on the lie that the church is some superior model of organization, and recognizing that it too is made up of humans, who are evil and flawed. I began going regularly, making my faith a bigger part of my life, and even choosing to go to a Christian law school. When I made the announcement I was going to a faith-based school, my parents were kind of taken aback, as they wouldn't have expected that from me, but they were supportive if that was the best school for me. When I began opening up to them about my faith and how important it is to me, they were really surprised, but they treat me just fine. I'm really sorry that happened to you, OP, but I'm glad you're doing better now. I can speak to the other side. For my daughter, she attends a UCC congregation, and I am very happy for her and her husband to be active in a church. I even attended a service at the Old South Church when they were living in Boston. The associate pastor made a joke that the roof didn't fall on me. For the record, UCC are pretty freaking liberal about most things. For a second there I thought you meant you could talk to the other side like in Sixth Sense and was like, well, if you believe you can talk to dead people I assume you would be religious. I exist at least. I'm sure I've talked about it on Reddit before, but me finding Catholicism was pretty much the result of searching for a spiritual guide and meaning of life. Atheism just didn't cut it for me. My parents didn't really mind but didn't support it either. At worst it is cynicalism. The fact that they didn't object shows that they support you. If not your religion, you have got some good parents. Not me but a friend. I was raised mildly religious and still am. My friend grew up in a firmly atheist household. She was an atheist in college, like a vocal one. She was also a philosophy major. Towards the end of college she started trying to decide what ethical system was the best. She eventually realized she likes the Catholic one bet. I think Thomas Aquinas, but I don't recall for sure. At that point she was kind of shocked to realize that, but it led to her digging more into Catholicism. She found she loved it all. She converted full bore. She now works for a Catholic charity and is married to a really religious Catholic dude. I think they're expecting their 4th kid soon. I'd have to check FB to be sure. And actually a guy I knew had a similar thing. Unrelated. Doubt they know each other. He went from Ayn Randian to super Catholic. It was really fast. Very hard on his GF at the time though because he became chaste. I grew up in a family that was kind of split along lines of religion. My mom was a Christian. My dad was probably agnostic. He doesn't talk about religion much. And my brother was a hardcore atheist. The turning point for me was reading the Bible in my junior year of high school and enthusiastically agreeing with everything Jesus had to say. It just seemed like the perfect fix to everything. I might count. I think my parents are agnostic. God was never a topic in our household. I have a vague memory of my dad saying he's agnostic. My family follows Reform Judaism, and while we weren't completely secular, Reform Judaism allows for the questioning of the existence of God and claims that laws, called halakha, are not binding. That is, we can pick and choose to follow laws that are meaningful to us. For example, if refraining from eating bacon is meaningful to you, then don't do it. If it's not meaningful, then go right ahead, even if the Torah says don't do it. I went through an atheist phase during my early teenage years, but I was seriously depressed about it. Decided around 15/16 that I did believe in the existence of God, and I happier in doing so. I use decide loosely because I have a hunch some people are naturally predisposed to believing or not believing in God, and that's not much we can change. It's an innate part of me. I couldn't change believing there is a God even if I wanted to or tried. Even if I was in line for the showers at Auschwitz. Though I believed in God again during my teenage years, I didn't make the jump to Orthodox Judaism, read religious Judaism, until my mid-20s. It was another light bulb defining moment, kind of like deciding to believe in God again, that I realized I believed Torah was God's word, and if it is, then I had to start following it. Again, it was the innate push from within. No one from my family or friends talked with me about this. Some might read that Reform Judaism to Orthodox Judaism isn't a major jump, but other Jews will recognize it's major to go from follow whatever halakha you want to halakha is binding even if it interferes with your normal life. There's even a special word dedicated for Jews who make this jump. We are called Baal Teshuvah. That's my story. Thanks for reading. The jump from Reform to Orthodox is way bigger than the jump from atheism to Reform. I wouldn't say my parents were agnostic atheist, more just irreligious people who never really thought about it. I grew up secular and irreligious as well, until I finally realized I was an atheist around age 17. Thought everything about Christianity was illogical and messed up, and that the Bible was full of more holes than Swiss cheese. I felt that way about it for several years throughout college. Then I met a couple Christian girls, one through a rather strange, and, in my later estimation, supernatural circumstance, and they were nice. We didn't get together or anything, we were just friends, but they were nice people, patient, kind, and loving in a way that just seemed almost inhuman. One of the girls was a member of a campus church, and I was invited over. I went because I enjoyed the girls' company, but I found myself enjoying the company of these weird, charismatic, tongue-speaking Christians who made no sense. I ended up feeling a strange compulsion to get those two girls together so that the one could join the other's church, since she wasn't part of a church and I felt she needed community. Turns out that act completely changed her life. So it was good I listened. Anyway, started reading the Bible and attending the church to support my friend getting integrated into the church. Ended up having this weird moment during a prayer time where I asked the rest of the group to pray that I know Christ, if he's really there. Took like 8 months, but that prayer was answered. Had a really bad moment where I felt betrayed by people I cared about, and I felt like I couldn't trust anyone. So I prayed about that, and I said that, and the very direct answer I got was to trust God instead. So I did. My mom was dead by then, but my dad just laughed it off and said it was a phase. Turns out it wasn't. He's no longer in my life, for other, completely unrelated reasons involving criminal activity on his part, but he treated it like a joke until the day I cut him out. It was just interesting seeing the difference Christ can make in people's lives, comparing my kind and patient friends with the butthole that my secular dad was. You don't have to answer if it's too personal, but I'm intrigued as to how the circumstances surrounding your meeting with the girl were supernatural, or at the very least strange. I exist. Parents are agnostic atheist. I believe in Christ. Growing up, I really recognized that I was not right, not good, that problems and suffering were all around me and there was nothing I could do about it, and in fact I was causing a lot of that pain. I saw my own depravity very clearly. When all of this became overwhelming, my family and others continued to tell me that I was a good person, but I knew that wasn't true. So I found a Bible in my house, snuck it into my room and took it to keep under my bed, reading every night, seeking understanding. Galatians 5 made it plain to me the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. My parents think I've had a drink of the Kool-Aid, especially when I wanted to get married, but they are kind, respectful, cynical, and think I take everything too seriously. I exist. My mother was raised Jewish and my dad was raised Christian. Neither will say that they don't believe in God, but they don't attend services and are mostly atheist. I was raised to call myself Jewish, but we celebrated both religions' holidays without temple church, unless I was with my grandparents. I was a staunch atheist for about 5 or 6 years. The Richard Dawkins type of atheist. Cringe, I know. I'm a biologist and science is actually why I became religious. Hear me out. When you look at a cell under an electron microscope, magnified 1,000 more times than with a light microscope, you see all these different components. There are organelles working without our cells to keep us alive, and if one fails, the cell dies. There are proteins building the organelles, and DNA and RNA to encode the proteins. One cell is vastly complicated, and that's repeatedly a billion times in every human, in every animal, plant, fungus, everything. And everything has to work just right or the whole system will collapse. The scale is inconceivable. Creationists will sometimes talk about the probability of an airplane being built if a tornado ran through a factory. Of course, it's impossible. That doesn't disprove evolution. To me, it just proves that maybe there's something else at play. I don't know if I believe in God as a deity, capable of changing the world on a whim. I certainly see divinity in organic life. I like to think of it as the opposite of entropy. Entropy destroys things and creates chaos. Maybe God is what builds and creates order. Right now, I'm very happy to be religious and to call myself Jewish. I attend services and sometimes lead like workshops at shul, synagogue. I've gained a wonderful community and it's one that stretches the whole globe. It's like gaining a family. Not everyone sees my religion like I do. I think I'm more agnostic than most Jews, and the more orthodox ones would think I'm not Jewish because I don't think the Torah is 100% accurate. Still, I am much happier than when I was an atheist and I wouldn't change it. Feel free to ask questions and I'll try to answer them. I exist. I turned to Christianity when I was 15. Specifically because I could feel that it's all true. It all hit me like a wave of happy tears, and I'm never going back. My mother is pure atheist, and she insisted that I keep all of the religious bullshit out of her face. As for my father, he was fully supportive of it all, although he also insisted that I not try bringing him into the light. Atheism never made sense to me, and neither did vague spiritualism, spiritual but not religious, or Eastern religions. I was left with pretty much Christianity, Islam, and Judaism to pick from, and Jesus captivated me, so I went with Christianity. Not glamorous or exciting, but I'm glad it happened to me. My gran was atheist, my mother was until she met my dad, so that made for an interesting discussion between my dad and gran. Gran, I believe we all exist in a huge ball of energy in the sky that shares wisdom from every being. We are there before we are born and we return when we die. Dad, that must be one really stupid ball of energy. I became a Christian when I was 16. My dad wants nothing to do with religion. To this day he will straight up walk away if you start talking about God or church. Mum was spiritual, still really can't figure her out. Short version, my parents were bad parents and treated me terribly. I was a teenager and stubborn as most are, so I definitely didn't help the relationship. I developed clinical depression, diagnosed later, and attempted to kill myself twice. After the second time I told my mom I thought about taking my life on a daily basis and she said I wish you would. So about an hour later I tried to OD on pills, but threw up everything. I was in so much pain that I couldn't get off the floor, so I tried praying to God. I had been told that God knows and sees everything and can hear your thoughts and prayers, and I really couldn't do anything else, so I prayed. I survived that night and got help. That started a year-long process where I studied most major religions, read books, read their scriptures, talk to adherents, etc. And I concluded that the Bible was actually the most true. It wasn't until after I decided to follow Jesus and saw firsthand my life and other lives change that I could say that I know this is true. Fast forward to today, my wife and I have gone on over a dozen mission trips to tell people about Christ, are now taking grad classes to be better missionaries teachers, and are members of a solid and healthy local church. My dad is concerned about our future, but will at least hear me out, and my mom has been attending church every week. Love it. That's so exciting. Oh man. So I grew up in the black sheep branch of a family of self-starters. My mom was happily unemployed and my dad worked construction on call. They didn't believe in God, going to church, etc. I was told that church was for rich people and that if I went they would have made fun of me. My family, especially mom, were always trying to scam people into giving her money, food stamps, deals on stuff no one wants, etc. I didn't attend church until late high school when I was a senior. I stayed at a friend's house and his family went one Sunday morning. I saw how they were excited about me coming and didn't make fun of me like my mom said. So I did and I loved it. It wasn't so much the religious aspect of it but more of the community aspect and how they helped one another. Fast forward and my friend's dad offers me a job right out of high school. He had a landscaping business and I worked it. His mom was also a teacher at a community college and helped me file for FAFSA. I got an associate's in business management and I'm currently going for a bachelor's in human resources. My family hates me. My mom told me she didn't want me anymore and how I betrayed them. My dad is never around but I'm pretty sure he backs her up. I've been blocked by them on almost all social media. I honestly think my mom and dad are jealous that I am succeeding in life without them. It's sad, it really is. Not because I'm hurt but because they can help themselves, but some people truly just want to be the victim in life. They are afraid of losing so they don't even try to succeed. It's always someone else's fault. The government, the system, etc. Anyways, not so much religion but church. I do have a good relationship with the man upstairs though. Not uncommon in Russia. Atheist Soviet parents' grandparents have children that revert to Orthodox Christianity. Not quite situation OP is asking for. My mom wasn't atheist but she wasn't really devout, never took us to church. My brother is atheist. I was agnostic and anti-organized religion but now I'm an Orthodox Christian. My mom is not necessarily interested, but has been very supportive. For those of you this question applies to, I have a serious question. All of the stories I've read in this thread seem to be stories of those finding Christianity. Specifically, why is that? Did you explore other traditions before making that choice? I ask because I was raised by a mother who was constantly searching for the right Christian church for herself. She finally found one that was right for her, but by that time I was pretty much an agnostic. As a teen, I started reading about non-Judeo-Christian religions and couldn't really justify the faith part of any religion. If Christians were right, Muslims were wrong. If Muslims were right, billions of Hindus were wrong, etc. I understand the concept of faith, but it seems arbitrary, like you only have faith in one specific god because you just so happen to be exposed to its religion first. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive. I'm just genuinely curious how that journey takes place. How do you go from no religion to choosing one specific religion? I never converted so I can't speak, but a thought might just be that Christians tend to minister more to people. Other religions don't really seek people out the same way as Christians. Yep, I'm here. It would be generous to call my parents spiritual and realistic to say they're agnostic, nearly atheist. My life has not been fun. There's been a lot of bad crap that happened. The low point was my daughter being born addicted to opiates. That was hard for me for so many reasons, but she came out pretty much okay from it. She's a teenager now and you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. There had to be someone looking out for me and it can't just be random chance. My parents were upset that I joined organized religion. My mom was mad that I'm not Catholic because she grew up Catholic. We never went to any church service. Is it really that surprising that people would be in that position? Because the question reeks of I'm atheist and I can't imagine anyone else being anything else for any logical reason. My parents grew up going to church and hated it because they didn't believe it, but they gave my siblings and I free rein to go to church with friends. I'm the only one who ever did. I just felt there was a God who cared about me, and growing up military we moved a lot so I got exposed to lots of religions by friends. After trying lots of churches, was even baptized in one, I realized I still didn't have any knowledge of Jesus and what happens when we die. I needed more than just you end up in heaven. Found the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS or Mormon, at 17 and they helped me read the Bible and other scriptures to find those answers. 9 years later I'm still learning about Jesus and how to be like him. and I haven't had questions about my purpose in life since. My parents on the other hand had a hard time with this church, none of the others. They'd heard rumors that men are controlling and women have to stay at home and be moms and you can't leave once you joined. All of these aren't true for the majority, although you do have occasional controlling spouses or family members, but that happens in all of society to some degree and a small percentage of the group as a whole. Anyhow, it basically ruined my relationship with my parents. I got married to someone who also goes to this church, and he's really helped me explain why I do the things I do, why I chose this church and what it's really like. My parents are okay with me being in the church now, although they don't agree with some things we believe in. I just wish I had been more open to them when I was deciding to become a member of this church. It would have made everything easier for our family. But, you know, 17-year-olds are typically known for good communication with parents. Pretty much everyone I've ever talked to who say they were atheists before and religious now ultimately end up falling into one of two categories when I listen to their stories. Usually they weren't really atheists, just non-religious in the traditional sense, meaning they didn't belong to a specific church or claim any specific organized religious belief, but they had supernatural religious-like notions. They had been introduced to the concept of God and knew it was a commonly accepted belief, even if they weren't taught any specific religious doctrine. So they're really just confusing atheism with informal non-specific religious belief. Or they were a non-believer, but not by choice. They usually were introduced to religion by a friend when they were young, typically by attending their friend's church after spending the night or being invited to some youth group function which unbeknownst to them was sponsored by a church. Their parents may or may not be actual atheists, or just not interested in attending church, but they were not formally introduced to organized religion and picked it up due to the social benefits. What have I never seen? Someone who was an atheist by choice, either having left religion or never wanting to adopt it, and then came back to religion on any level. C.S. Lewis walked away from the church at 15. He was raised by very religious parents. Being French, I try not to talk about that to my relatives and friends. Faith is a personal matter. I wouldn't know how anyway. I call that la vie or the existence to not give words that makes people irrational, but I could very well use the word God because it has the same meaning to me. I kinda went a logical path too long to write, but I mostly came to it through logic and confirmation bias effects. What I can say is that I'm not absolutely convinced God exists, but that the existence of faith and its power are real, and we determine what is real by observing its effects on its environment. So who cares the name we put on that? It has power, whatever it is, and the religious discourses are pretty spot on to speak about that. Science on the opposite is very bad to Anyway, I exists. My parents only needs to know I'm happy and not a too bad person. I feel grateful for every day I go through. I'm thankful for every strong feeling and every sunshine the world gives me. My mom was raised Catholic, my dad Presbyterian. They never had me baptized or took me to church. Now I'm in my senior year of college and I've started attending religious events 3 times a week. I just woke up one day and felt like something was watching my every move and guiding me on my way. I figured it was that old bastard God and decided to jump on the train. An ex-girlfriend of mine had extremely atheist parents. Like they had a better than you mentality cause of it. Anyways, she ended up following this religion called the Zoroastrian religion. Sorry if I butchered that. I don't remember the parents' reaction that much, but I know it was something along the lines of I think you're making a mistake, but it's your life, your choice. Zoroastrianism. Very interesting. Old religion that influenced the Abrahamic religions. If I believed in a god, that would be the religion I'd follow. Not me, but my father was raised agnostic atheist. He converted in his 20s after meeting my religious mother, but my father's parents had both died by then, so no reaction. Not me, but one of my close high school friends. Admittedly we are not so close now, just distance though. There was a terrible drunk driving accident, and my friend was driving home from her work, and so was her future husband. They met on the crash site and called the ambulance etc. Unfortunately the girl passed away, but it created some type of bond between them because they stayed in touch. We also all knew the girl because it was a very small town. For example, my high school was 300 students. We also all knew the driver and that he fled the scene. My friend was really in ruins about it. I remember it was in our last year of high school the accident happened and close to end of year and graduation, and there was a leavers party and she was so drunk and kept asking me why she had to die. We ended up having to call her mother to come and get her, but it was so sad. Her and the guy got closer and closer, and he was Christian, so she attended church with him and ended up falling in love with him. I think it gives her a lot of solace. I think their church is quite beautiful because the people are incredibly inclusive and kind and do things for the community. So I don't believe her family had much at all to say about it, and she's always very much made her own decisions. I ended up being a bridesmaid in her wedding and they are expecting a child soon. So that's how she became religious. I think for her it was really necessary for her healing. I don't know much about religion and tend to only hear the negative side of it, but I think for my friend it really was for her. Before my parents divorced, they were both pretty religious, but then my mom left when I was like 8 or 9 to do her thing and my dad retained full custody and got remarried. His new wife and him tried for a while, but he works with churches as part of his job and he just can't do the religion thing after seeing how they do business. I sat pretty comfortably at God exists I guess, but whatever. Fast forward to freshman year of college and my mom and I have gotten back in contact and she's a Messianic Jew. I'm still agnostic until I go to her church. It's more like a small congregation of people who meet in a tiny space. Most of us meet in houses, and suddenly I can't deny it anymore. I'm not sure if my dad and stepmom even know, but my grandparents who are Southern Methodist Christians took it kinda weird. Not bad, just confused. Like, why be Jewish if you still believe in Jesus? Because latkes are awesome, I would imagine. I'll speak for my sons, cause they don't read it. Anyway, I've been an atheist since sitting in church at 5 years old, thinking something just wasn't right. As I grew up, I visited several different churches, a variety if you will, thinking a different sect would make me see do to speak. However, that was never the case, so atheist I became. I've never led my sons in any particular direction, cause I believe choosing a sect or whether to believe or not is a major decision which can affect lives in many ways, so it is a choice each person should make for themselves. I just don't agree with forcing the issue one way or the other. My oldest attends church, Bible studies, etc. off and on, while my youngest is still undecided at best. I love them to the moon and back regardless. My grandfather is agnostic but went to church and took his kids because that was his community and his weekly socialization as a solo parent, working and going to university. He went for the people, not the preaching. Of that, 3 of his kids grew up atheist, and 1 found Jesus in her early 20s. She's now in her 40s and is hardcore Catholic. The rest of my grandfather's family, his siblings and their children, are all Protestant, so that sometimes comes up as an issue at family functions. For the most part, we ignore her. The only times it's really come up is during the same-sex marriage issue 2 years ago, and when she asked me about when I was baptizing my kids. I'm not. My mom was somewhat religious growing up. Her family believed in God but were never really devout. I'm pretty sure they were Protestants. My mom came from a pretty broken up home. Her parents had a rough marriage and for some reason waited to leave each other until their kids were much older. So, my mom and her sister had to sit through it all. There was no abuse, just pure hate. Then my mom met my dad and eventually went to church with his family. My dad has a lot of siblings and a very comforting home. His family are devout Catholics and I think my mom fell in love with all the singing and hugging. Anyway, since then she's always been very devout to the Catholic Church, more than my father and his family. Personally, I've never enjoyed church. The only reason I go is on holiday to please my mom or when a relative passes away. I'm atheist now, but by no means do I hate the church. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.